Welcome to Monetary Therapy Show. I'm Mike Stiskin, Mike on the mic, where we talk about money, mindset, and building an extraordinary life. Wanted to give you, I guess, my life story. I'll try and make it quick. Everybody's got a great story. You know, people who've lived 50 years, you got something to say. 30 years, you have something, you know, as you go, 60, 70, you really do. So let's get to it. I was born in Boston, Massachusetts, to Rick Stiskin, Richard Allen Stiskin, and Mary Palumba. And my dad left when I was a year old, which was difficult on my mom. And she moved in, I believe, with her father, Louis Palumba, who lived in Old Greenwich, Connecticut, and her brother, Lou. Also living right nearby in Stamford, Connecticut, were my father's parents, Marjorie and Bernie Stiskin. And together, you know, they helped my mom to cope and figure it out. My brother, Jeff, he's a little older. I think he was 3 or 4 at the time. You could imagine that's really challenging. You know, marriage is hard. It's worth it, but it's really difficult. So my mom had to make do. My earliest memories in Stanford, maybe I was 5 years old and kindergarten or nursery school or something like that. I remember like falling off a jungle gym. I remember my mom's condo in the late 70s, early 80s. And we had those Halloween costumes. Remember, they were in like a big tin. You'd open them up with the plastic on it. I remember that. And everything was great. Everything was fine. You go to see the grandparents. You know, my mother's father, Lou, Papa Louie, he was, you know, not that into kids, but he was a nice guy. He was like a mechanic in the war, and he was retired. And so, you know, it was interesting at his house, but not as fun as Marjorie and Bernie, my father's parents. We'd go over there for a long time. They were much more into kids, and, you know, they could entertain you. Then my mother met my stepfather and moved to Redding, Connecticut, maybe in 82, 83. I think I was 7 years old. And we went to, it was kind of an upper middle class upbringing. We didn't want for anything. We didn't want for money or medicine or gifts or, you know, clothing or food. So that was interesting. But they used to argue like cats and dogs all the time, just screaming and yelling at each other. And we didn't know, you know, what that was about. We didn't know. It wasn't about us. And so it was me, my brother, and then Bill's son, Billy, my stepbrother, who was a little older than me, same grade though, who was, you know, he matured early. He had a beard. I should have been held back a grade. And I've heard my stepfather might have mentioned that to my mom, and she didn't want to do that for some reason. So I was always very small, very shy, you know, not great at sports. I didn't really have a role model. My father, we visited a few times in Massachusetts, and he moved to Florida. So I saw him maybe once or twice a year. And then when I went to see him, he kind of worked the whole time. He did take us a few places, to Disney, took us to California once. You know, you go to the theme parks, Wet and Wild, but it wasn't, you know, the greatest relationships. We actually kind of worked a lot when we were there. We'd work at his business, you know, or we'd bike around and get candy. But, you know, it was what it was. So growing up in Redding is beautiful. There's fishing in the summer, and it was idyllic. And we lived up in a little bit of a hill, like a small mountain, and you had, you know, trees and plenty of land. And then in the winter, you know, you had sledding and snow and stuff like that. And everything was fine. I was not the most popular kid. I was so shy. I was so painfully shy, but I had some good friends. And, you know, I played tennis. Everybody picked a sport. I didn't like being hit. I didn't like getting hit with a baseball. You know, you play and the pitcher would miss and hit you. Football, I never even tried. Hockey, I never even tried. Basketball, I tried. I was terrible. Soccer, I tried. I was not that good. Tennis, I was okay. But you got to start playing tennis when you're like 3 or 4 years old to be good. You have to take lessons from a professional coach. And nobody knew anything. Nobody knew what was going on. You know, one of the issues I have with my parents, even though I'm lucky that I had some safety, you know, in the upbringing, some means, is they didn't focus on any of the education or sports or anything. I had no idea what I was doing. You're just kind of drifting around, doing what everybody else is doing and trying to figure out life. And I'd go for the summer sometimes with my brother to stay, you know, at my dad's place in Orlando, where I live now. But it was an okay upbringing, except the screaming and yelling every night. My stepfather was drunk every second, and driving around drunk, nearly killing us a dozen times. And you'd walk around on eggshells. I mean, he's a real douchebag. Just you couldn't say a word. He'd be screaming at you. Anything you did, he would yell at you. He was always angry, and he hit us a few times. He hit my mom. He swung my sister into a banister. A couple years later, my mother gave birth, and that's my half sister. So he's a real piece of trash. He's still alive. He lives in Fort Myers. But that's the trick. It's like you have means, people think you have everything. But it was really a weird upbringing where you're so shy, you're so kind of repressed, you don't know what to do, you can't say anything. You think that's normal. You don't talk to your friends about it. You don't know, and you're kind of frightened all the time. It was a very strange upbringing, which kind of came back to haunt me later. Anyway, so then I start dating a girl finally, and I go to college. I went to Rollins College in Winter Park, Florida. I was always going to go to school, I think, near somebody I knew. It was right down the street from my father, and it's right down the street from where I live now. I came here in 93 and really never left 33 years ago. My brother, sisters, they went to school here and there, hours and hours away. I just didn't even think of that. I guess I would have if I got in there, but I got into Rollins, fortunately. And so I came down and, moved to Winter Park, Florida, and went to school. And, I was 17. I was short. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to use a clothes washer. I was so isolated. I never mowed a lawn. It wasn't like laziness. I just had no idea what I was doing at school. You have these kids you hear about. They go to Exeter and they go to Groton and they go to Choate, like some of my cousins, and they want to be in medicine or they want to be an attorney, and they're doing summer internships, and they have legacy of a fraternity, or their father was this or that. I had no idea what I was doing there, and maybe a lot of people don't. And, I got the dean's list, and I was trying to be on the tennis team, but I didn't start early enough, and I wasn't tall. I wasn't competitive. I didn't like competition or pressure or stress. So very quickly got into drinking and partying, and really did that for the next 3 3/4 years. I mean, but what a good time if I could go back. I mean, I got everything out of it. So that's the good part, is I really had fun, made some lifelong friends. Rollins, I don't know if it's a good school or not. They didn't teach me much. I didn't know what to do. There wasn't somebody on top of me, like trying to help. It was really like sort of questions like, why aren't you doing well or something? It was just nobody to help. My grandparents, my parents, nobody giving you direction or anything at all. It was very weird. So I do my 4 years there, and my mom, of course, sort of towards the end, started losing her mind. So I went back to Connecticut every summer to teach tennis. And I would, trying to help her out. We got her institutionalized. I didn't know what was going on. I'm just trying to be young and party and play tennis and drink and chase girls, and just no idea what's going on. And that was way above my pay grade. My brother had moved on, lived in Florida, lived in Georgia. I think he was engaged at some point, but my sister was like 13 years younger, and she's doing what she's doing, winning all these trophies. She was an incredible athlete. My stepbrother doing what he's doing. So it kind of fell on me to handle it, and I didn't know what to do. And we got her institutionalized, and at some point, she got better to a degree. And then I moved to Florida permanently. I didn't even, it was just sort of like, why not? It's one of those weird things. It wasn't like a big plan. I'm like, yeah, I'll just go down. I'll live with my father for a little bit. Then he got me out of his house, put me in an apartment. I had all these terrible odd jobs, because I wasn't teaching tennis in the summer in Connecticut anymore. My mom was in and out of therapy, tons of meds, drinking. My stepfather's drinking and fighting, and you go back for the summer or you go back to visit and you see your friends and you party, and and it was fine, but I just no idea what I was doing still after college, drinking, partying. My grandfather, I think, helped me get a house. So my first house, this tiny falling apart house, and I always was entrepreneurial though. I built lofted beds in college. I sold furniture in college. We go get to Salvation Army and get a giant truckload of couches. I used to sell those. I'd sell posters and bracelets. I had all these interesting things I was kind of doing, but no idea, like, career-wise. I started delivering pizza one day. I was so embarrassed. I went to deliver pizza my first time, my collared shirt, and I don't know, you think it's beneath you, but then I did that for like 3 or 4 years. It was fine. I had like 5 part-time jobs, whether it was tutoring, it was delivering pizza, it was debt consolidation on the phone, helping my dad with roofing stuff. Then I worked for a cable company. Then I went and managed a restaurant for Steak and Shake, just kind of drifting around, not really a lot of goals. Some of my college friends came to live with me and rent rooms in my house. I kind of remodeled the house. I started fixing it up. I was very handy. My brothers got like Yankees jerseys for Christmas. I got tools. So that interested me. Like my mother's father, Papa Louie, he was so good at fixing stuff. It amazed me. Every time he came over, he was kind of shy, so he would just go fix things. And so I started doing that and remodeling the house. Then I met my first wife at some sort of party, and I got her hooked up with my grandfather to teach her English. She just got here from Taiwan, and then so he's teaching her English. And then eventually we started hanging out, and then we got together, and then we got married. And same thing, she was a very nice person. I just had no idea what I was doing, none. I was kind of sure I didn't want to have kids. My mother had a lot of mental problems, and it just didn't dawn on me. Other people are like, oh, I want to have a big family. I just didn't think of stuff like that. We're married a couple years. I'm teaching tennis and different things. And then I was teaching tennis to this lady who played Pocahontas at Disney, and her fiance or boyfriend at the time was starting like a home maintenance business with, I think it was KB Homes, and his dad worked there and his buddy worked there, and all the family was kind of involved. So I gave up on tennis instead of working at the country club. I think I got an offer from Aliquot to like string rackets. I was like, all right, I'm done with tennis. I did it way too long. I was an international and a national professional tennis instructor. And I had thoughts of, kind of these weird novice thoughts, like I'll go to Asia or something and teach. Or I went to Asia with my grandfather for like a couple of weeks. Went to Japan and China, and I brought some like resumes or something, but I never did too much with it. I just was so confused about what to do, and just was going along with the paces of life. Anyway, a couple years later, marriage doesn't work out. I mean, I don't know what I'm doing. Language barrier, cultural barrier, that was very tricky. And that was, the first time, really horrible kind of depression when that was over. I was so frustrated and angry. I didn't know what to do. We'd gone to couples therapy, and I think I went to individual therapy, but I was so depressed after that. I was just devastated that I kind of ruined the marriage and asked her to leave and just was alone. We had 2 dogs. There was some lady I'd been seeing on and off since like 1999, and I kept getting back together with her in between. But eventually found some friends in the neighborhood, started hanging out with them. They eventually get divorced, hanging out with them and their family a couple more years. It's just sort of doing handiwork. I became a handyman. I'd left the job with the guy a few years ago, right about the housing crisis. He was having some issues, and my marriage was failing, and so I just went out on my own, which was kind of a bold choice now that you think about it, doing handiwork full time. But costs were low, low mortgage back then. And you just doing my best. I got really good at fixing things. I could fix just about anything. I had tons of tools, and you can charge pretty good money. My therapist helped me with that. He's like, you need to charge more. So, I start dating and dating apps and things like that. And I'm in a relationship, and this doesn't work. And I'm in that relationship. That doesn't work. And through therapy, I've been in therapy over 20 years, you kind of learn what's going on. It just takes a while. I learned that my relationships are failing because I wouldn't communicate with the girls. And, it was tough with my first girlfriend, long distance at college, and then that ended. And it just really bothered me. And it was hard for me to speak up. I was so shy. And that was the issue. I couldn't talk. I couldn't share my emotions or feelings. So I eventually meet who is my current wife on Match.com. We get together and just took things really slow. I used to be very fast paced, but then this was the right thing. I was like, let me slow down. Let me figure out what I'm doing. Let me take this seriously. And, months and months and months, and then we're a couple, and then, we're like, all right, now we're engaged. And then all of a sudden we're building a house, and we're moving over to Lake Nona where we live now. and I'd bought some rental properties. And then, you have this ready-made family. My wife had a son and a daughter, and it was pretty good. It was a lot of work, moving was horrible. I never want to move again. But things were going okay, working hard. I got some Corvettes. I was having some fun. We're doing traveling and cruises and things like that. I'd also went with my first wife over to Taiwan. So I got to see some of the world. I went to Hong Kong. I went to Aruba and Jamaica all the time. I went snowboarding in Colorado. So I traveled a little bit. But now with my wife, and I'm buying more properties. Things are moving forward. She became a realtor. Everything's going okay in the new neighborhood in Lake Nona and the new house. Other than Lennar Homes, those pieces of trash. I'll tell you, the worst home builder ever. We had so many problems with our brand new house. I couldn't believe it. Just absolute trash builders. And they wouldn't fix anything. Just terrible. But what happened to me, I started having problems with the properties, started having problems with the tenants, started having problems with the management company, the HOA. Nobody would fix anything. There was all these roof leaks and they wouldn't fix them. And then I have tenants in there, and then there's mold, and then I'm tarping the roofs myself. And it started to be every few days I was over there at my own cost tarping roofs. It's ridiculous. Terrible management. And then tenants and the buildup of problems. I started having some problems with clients. I started having problems. My stepfather had left and taken all the money, that piece of trash, left my mom, cheated on her, left her with nothing, took everything. And we had to take care of her. And so me going back and forth, and now the new house and new wife, it really took a lot out of me. And, I didn't get it. I was having panic attacks. I was just doing everything, going back and forth to Connecticut all the time. That was tough. And then my mom passed from COVID. And then after that, all that buildup of problems with tenants and clients and customers. And I had this idiot down the street who screwed me on a real estate deal. And I just collapsed one day. And I was having these panic attacks. I started getting on anti-anxiety meds. And then I just lost it. I had a nervous breakdown. And my dad takes me to the ER. And then they take me to another one by ambulance. I survived. And then they Baker Act me. They won't let me out of the hospital. Then I get to go to this mental institution for 3 days. I don't recommend it. So it was harrowing. And then I spent the next 18 months in bed with clinical depression on tons of different meds. That mental institution was crazy. All these lunatic doctors in there giving you random meds. They're asking you what meds you want. Just stupid people. That idiot Blackberry Center. Just ridiculous, corrupt crap. Anyway, so I'm back home, 18 months in bed, wishing I'm dead. Every night I'm praying I'm going to die. Every night I'm praying I'm going to die. I don't want to bring people down, but I want people to know that you can overcome things. So the end of the story is great because I'm here. I can't figure it out. I'm not, going to commit suicide. I buy the gun. I buy the bullets. I still got the bullets. It's just a memoir. I sold the gun, but I went to Daytona to kind of end it. I didn't have the guts to do it. You read things online about, what's going to happen. Maybe on the other side, it's worse. Your family finding you. You have all these awful thoughts. Unless you've been there, you don't know. It's like I talked about earlier. If you've never been pregnant, you can't know what it's like. If you've never been to war, you can't know what it's like. If you've never been depressed, you cannot know what it's like not wanting to be here. It's not personal. And I just got lucky. I threw out all my meds. I went back to work. There wasn't one thing. I just got kind of tired of being tired. I got tired of letting my family down. I wanted to just do something. I lost all this weight. And I just started working again, started getting back into it. And I had a bunch of other setbacks. A lot of people scammed me and cheated me and lied because I'm a nice guy. I'm flawed, but a nice enough guy, honest guy, and people take advantage of you. At some point, I'll name names of these douche canoes. And, lost a bunch of money, lost a bunch of time, lost a bunch of this. But my wife stuck by me, my family stuck by me, which is the most important thing. And then just kind of slowly got better and got to work and then started meeting people and started learning about money, Started learning about properties and flipping and subject to acquisitions and loans and refinancing and fiduciary and the stock market and borrowing against assets. And, the stock market's very dangerous. You got to be careful. I lost a boatload on there, and I've made mistakes since, but I've learned a ton about it, so that's a good thing. So now I'm on a much better footing in terms of that. We bought a lot of cash flowing assets. We kind of bought our way out of work and bought rental cars, rental properties, and persevered. And now I go to the gym every day. I started doing stand-up comedy. I started writing a book, like a biography. I built this studio. We flipped several houses. We sold a couple. We 1031 exchanged some. Now we've kind of bought our way where we don't have to work anymore. You see how all the negativity and the depression and the suicidal ideas and things, it's part of life. All right? You can figure it out. Hopefully you get lucky, you survive. That's what this is, this tattoo, which I don't know if you can see it. It's a semicolon, project semicolon. So the girl, unfortunately, who came up with that didn't make it. But its period would be you didn't make it. Semicolon is the next chapter, and that's it. So I got 50 years. I'm 50 years old. I got 50 more years to make a difference in this world. And my grandfather, one of the greatest people who ever lived, Oscar Bernard Stiskin, talked about that. You're on this earth to make a difference. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to help people. I'm going to help my family. Money doesn't make you happy, but abundance can. And I go to therapy still. I'm not on any meds. I try and do the best I can for everybody. Try to be the most honest, the most integrity. And I try to have perspective. And that's one thing therapy does. I've got a little thingy that I kind of stole from one of my mentors, Scott Galloway. See that? It's a picture of Otto von Frank. I might have talked about this before. That's my perspective. I keep those in every room. My wife is like, why do you have this old guy in the room? My wife's great. It's just she doesn't, like some of the quirkiness and oddness about me. Anyway, Otto von Frank is Anne Frank's father. And Anne Frank and her sister and mother and father were in, I think, Germany and, during World War II in the 30s, and then the Nazis come in, and so they flee to Amsterdam. I don't know the story word for word. I'm paraphrasing. I'll do my best. Eventually, the Nazis get to Amsterdam, Holland, and someone hides them in an attic. And so for 2 years, they're up in this attic hiding behind this bookcase from the Nazis, because the Nazis are taking all the Jews and killing, almost all of them. One of the worst parts of history, Adolf Hitler. Anyway, so this guy, he's up there with his family for 2 years in the attic, and then they get caught or turned in or whatever. Somebody discovers it. He goes to one concentration camp. His wife goes to another. The two girls go to a third is what the story is. The girls die of typhus, I think, a few months before liberation. The wife is murdered, and Otto survives. And that picture is Otto von Frank after the war going back to the attic. And now he's looking where he lived for 2 years with his wife and his two daughters, and he has nothing. That's perspective. And what I got from that and Scott Galloway is I do not have any real problems. I have inconveniences in my life. To have perspective that I have it all, that I live the absolute dream of a life, the greatest life that anyone's ever lived. Because I have my family. I have my son and daughter. I have my granddaughter. I have my daughter-in-law. I have my mother and father-in-law. I have my father and stepmother. I have my brother. I have my sister. I have my stepbrother. This guy lost everything. So that's perspective, to appreciate what you have, to be humble and say, man, I have the absolute best life, and I do, and I'm only going to make it better. And I want to motivate people and help them with their lives and with money and with ambition and motivation and drive, and use my story. I lived it. I survived, but it was pure luck. But if I can help somebody else, I was on the brink of death, and now I've never been more successful, never been more healthy physically, mentally. I'm working out every day. I'm striving. I'm trying to get organized. I'm going to write books, and I'm going to do a lot of great stuff. And most importantly, I'm going to spend time with my family and show them my appreciation that they stuck with me and that we grinded it out together. Life can happen to you. It's never going to be easy, but it is worth it. And so I'm very blessed. I have everything anyone could ever want. Contentment is something I imagine some people struggle with. You have to find contentment. You have to understand that you are very fortunate. There's always a bigger boat, a nicer car, a bigger house, and better salary and nicer trips. But I'm never happier than when I'm with my family. And I look up to the sky and I thank whoever's there and say thank you for that moment. You take these little snapshots. You've got to enjoy yourself, enjoy your family while they're still here, while you have them, and enjoy the abundance and the wonder of life. You will have problems, life will happen to you, trials and tribulations, but try and remember Otto von Frank. You don't have real problems. You have inconveniences, okay? Try and be proud of the life you've created and be happy in the moment. There's always going to be more, but if you're not chasing that, you can see the wonder that is life. Well, thank you very much. In closing, remember, you can't have an extraordinary life doing ordinary things. I'm Mike on the mic. This has been Monetary Therapy. This was a little bit of a history lesson. Most of the time, we're going to talk about money and cash flowing assets, but hopefully this helped you out. If you have any questions, info@monetarytherapy.com or www.monetarytherapy.com, our website. Please check out all our videos. Our YouTube channel link is there, and we'll keep doing more content. We're going to win. There's nothing going to stop me. Absolutely nothing. I'm a juggernaut. I'm going to win for my family. Having responsibility is the greatest thing. I have something to achieve to help them with abundance, to be there for them in times of crisis. That is my responsibility for the next 50 years, and then I'm just going to check out, okay? So I have something to strive for, and so do you. You're worth it. The world is better with you in it. Stay positive. Stay upbeat. Don't beat yourself up. Everybody's done things wrong. The Mount Rushmore of mistakes, my face is on it. I've done 1,000 things wrong. I did a couple last week that were ridiculous, but I learned from them. You have to just learn and move forward and keep going until the job gets done. You can do it, right? We'll see you next time. Mike STISKIN, Monetary Therapy Show. Thank you for listening.